Okay. On behalf of MSU Denver and the Center for Entrepreneurship, welcome. We are talking to what I call inspired entrepreneurs, women who have a strong why behind their business. And today I'd like to introduce you to Amy Lee. She's the founder and owner of Artistic Interior Design. Artistic Interiors is a distinguished, high-end interior architecture and design firm known for its exceptional blend of architectural precision and luxury design. Specializing in creating sophisticated, bespoke environments, Artistic Interiors combines cutting-edge design with meticulous attention to detail to craft timeless interiors. I'm so excited, Amy, to have you here today to talk to us about the world of interior design, how you got into this, because I know you started when you were really young, and that is so brave. So I would love you to tell us about your business, how you got into it, and what inspired you to start.
Thank you, Becky. Nice to be here.
Mhm.
Um, so I started the passion for architecture when I was very young. I kind of used to draw, like when they would sit down and say, "What do you draw something as a child?" I would always draw houses. And I never was the type that like I would rearrange my bedroom and things like that, but I was never, fully into like the decorating kind of aspect. I had a very strong passion for architecture. And when I went to college, it's a kind of a funny story because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no clue. I went to the school I went to because it was kind of close to home and my mother felt comfortable with it. It was a liberal arts school. And this is kind of a funny story because all my friends, they knew what they wanted or they thought they knew what they wanted to do and they all went to schools for it. And then I went to school not knowing what I wanted to do. And my roommate was studying interior design. And I was like, well, that sounds fun. I was like, I think I'll try that. and and to this day, I'm the only designer or the only person in my friend group who's still doing what they went to college for. So I just think it's such a funny story. And that's why I always tell people sometimes you don't know, it just finds you. Um, but so when I started in the classes, I really got very involved in the construction and the architecture and the drafting, and I just loved it. And it was in the like mid to late 90s. So we didn't have a lot of the programs we have, like our AutoCAD was just kind of coming out. So everything was done by hand. And I just loved it. And it was like everything just started to click, that this is what I'd always kind of been passionate about. So I explored going into school for architecture. I got accepted into Clemson, and I was going to go. I started taking classes like calculus and stuff, and I decided at the last moment that it was really a hard struggle and challenge, like for me to decide which program, and I decided to stay in the interior design program, which at that time, interior design wasn't kind of as much architecturally focused. People didn't even really know what interior design was. They still today, it's still people, there's such a broad range of what interior design could mean. But I just had to like kind of search my intuition and go on my gut. And I continued with the interior design program. And I was always just very passionate about it. And I think that was the one thing that just, I wanted to do my work. I wanted to like work hard on my projects. I just liked what I was doing. And I think that is really the founding principle behind being successful in anything. Is that if I didn't feel passionate or love what I did, I don't think I'd have the motivation to get up and do it as much as I do every day. Because, you have to love it because you're going to do it, hopefully, I guess you could change, but a lot. Out of school, I decided to go work for some architecture firms because I did want to get that architectural, base. I wanted to do more than furniture and fabrics. I loved that, but I really did love the actual space planning, the construction, the architectural end of things. And so I worked for several architecture firms in Atlanta. And then I moved to Manhattan, like right after 9/11. And it was kind of a weird story in Atlanta. The architecture firms went on like hold. All the projects went on hold after 9/11 because there was all this uncertainty. And I had always wanted to live in a big city. And I had friends in Manhattan. And so I had been going to Manhattan like So I felt like it was kind of like a second home for me already. And there was job opportunities there, believe it or not. And so I picked up and left and worked for a firm there. And it was in that firm that I started to get opportunities where people would say, hey, will you do this for us? Can you kind of do that for us on the side? And then I went back to Atlanta to check on a project I had been working on. It was like my first baby. And the client walked in and she just happened to be there. It was coincidence because she lived in DC. And she was like, we've been looking for you. We want you to finish this job and all this. So she hired me to finish the project. And I just kind of started doing two jobs. So I started working at the architecture firm, or I was working at the architecture firm. I started doing my own projects on the side. And I was like 24. So I mean,
Incredible.
very young. Yeah. And so at that time, I just finally got to the point where I was like, they don't pay you well. Like this was still like, this was early 2000s, obviously. And the architecture firm wasn't paying me very well. And living in Manhattan is very expensive. And I was just like, I just went out on a limb and just said, I'm going to quit and I'm going to market myself and I'm going to try and get my own work. And worst case scenario, I go find another job. Like I just always was like, worst case scenario, I can make a different decision. Like I can go find another job. But if I could even get 3 jobs a year, I'm going to be making more than if I just stayed in this position. And
Wow.
I have a very creative like soul and I love being able to get up and well, at the time I could kind of do what I wanted with my day. I could plan my hours. I could, and I loved that freedom. So I thrived in that. And that's been 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. So I've just continued to build. It was a lot of marketing. It was a lot of, getting out there. It was a lot of just also being willing to take the risk of not knowing what tomorrow brings
Mhm.
and having faith in yourself, and just always knowing, you can go get a job at any time,
Yeah, that's a help.
you're
That's
not
back,
locked.
fall back.
Yeah, you're not locked into this thing. And I always wanted to work for myself. I knew that when the time came when I had children, I would want to have the flexibility to be able to go and do what I wanted, see them in their classes and not be locked into a 9 to 5 or whatever. And at that time, people were really expected to work way more than 9 to 5. Like today, it's
Yeah.
things are different, I think. Like the people that I hire that are my generations younger, they're good at like, no, I'm not working, 80 hours a week. But back then it was like everybody worked 80 hours a week
Oh yeah, for sure.
and you didn't get paid for
I know.
it.
Right? It is good that things have changed. What the millennials are changing things for us, so we don't have to do that
It's
anymore.
good. It's good. I mean, and as a business owner today, like I have to respect that, and some days I'm like, oh, the ethic is not the same. But then on other days, I'm like, it's good that the work ethic isn't the same, because
Yeah.
we have an overly stressed out population in America. Um, so yeah, did that kind of answer? I
Hey,
just kind of went on.
I loved it. Now, you mentioned something about you had to market yourself. So what did you do? What did marketing look like for you then?
Yeah.
It's different from now,
So
right? It's
it
20
was
years.
so different. Like, so how did I market myself? I'm trying to remember. So I remember reaching out to local magazines and we did not even have like, we had the internet, but it wasn't like it is today. Like we didn't have like House or any of these Pinterest or anything like that. Like there was like there's platforms I market myself on today we did not have. And so it was a lot of word of mouth. It was a lot of going to the architects and the builders that I had met through various projects and saying, hey, I'm trying this thing out. Um, I mean, it was so old school. It was even like I even remember going to the newspaper and stuff like that at the time and being like, I remember that someone had posted that they were looking for an interior designer for a restaurant. And I don't remember where I found that, but it was some backwards like thing today where I found it, and just reaching out and like kind of asking to be interviewed for those positions. I do recall I remember being in a small magazine that was like Rising Stars or something in Manhattan, and I just really had to get out there. And I wish I could remember everything I did, but it's been a while.
And so
But
where are you from?
I'm from South Carolina.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
your first job was actually in Atlanta though?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah. So I went to school in upstate South Carolina, like in Anderson, which is outside of like the Clemson area.
okay.
And then I went to Atlanta, started there, and then went to Manhattan for 5 years. And then when I met my ex-husband there, we had a child, and then it was like, okay, I kind of had to make a hard decision. Like I was really like starting to be up and coming in the design community there. And I knew good well that I was like, if I leave and I go back closer to home, one, I have to start all over. And two, I'm not going to have the same kind of career. Like I'm not like if I stayed in Manhattan, I could have, probably the best career, I could ask for. I can be really well known. I could be in with all the best interior designers that are, like, celebrities in my field. But I was like, I just felt like it wasn't the right path for raising children.
Mhm.
And I wanted to be closer to my mom. And so I just made the decision. We moved right outside of Charlotte to Lake Norman. And I had to start all over.
Oh my gosh. That is a challenge, but these are the things women do. They
Yeah,
and
you have to make these choices. And that was my choice. And I'm not saying that's everybody's path, but for me, it was going to be hard to raise children in a city like that where you needed a lot of money. You needed money to have nannies. You needed money to send them to private school. And I was like, it was a lot.
you do that. Wow. Oh my gosh. So now tell us a little bit about your education path and what sort of education. Tell us more about that.
So my education path was really just a 4-year degree in a interior architect or interior design program. The lady that I studied underneath, she's now FIDER accredited. So what that means for interior design is that the program has become much more popular and much more credentialed. So, what we've seen over the past 2 decades is interior design has gone through what people used to think of as like just your normal decorator to really a licensed interior architect. And so, the program that I went through was more geared around preparing you for like that licensed interior architecture work. We did do the colors and the fabrics and things like that, but it was not at the time FIDER accredited. Today it is, and the lady that actually who I studied under, she's still there. And the program has blossomed into this really well-known program. But that was it. That was it. All I did. I did a 4-year degree. I had thought about going in to get my master's. I didn't. It wasn't something I ended up needing to do. I have pondered going back and getting my master's in architecture, through the years. But one of the main reasons and the main driver behind what I do is not only my passion, I love what I do, but it's to provide for my family. So there is this like major, I've always been the one who's basically provided for my family. My ex and I separated when my daughter was 1, and I've been like the breadwinner and the sole, mom, mom and dad for my children. And so even when there are days where I'm like, oh, I really like to take a step back, or I would really only like to take on 2 projects instead of 6, I'm like, I have children that I need to get through college. So they've been a huge motivator for me. But thank goodness I do love what I do and I'm good at what I do. If I did not have that need to maybe continuously make sure I'm bringing in money, I may would go back to school, but I did not need to. So I'll do some continuing education classes occasionally, and we're always kind of learning it's almost impossible not to learn as you go through this industry. Things are constantly changing. New programs are coming out all the time. technology has really changed things, obviously. So, but what I do is I hire people that know how to do the new technology.
Oh, good. Ooh, that's good. Yeah, tell us about that experience. Like, when did you hire your first person? Because that's a huge step. So when did that happen and what was that process like? And how has that been for you?
So I had a couple of employees along the path. So when I was in Manhattan, I did hire one lady to help me. But so there was some like little side employees that I'd have here and there. But I'd say like so my business has gone through several phases. It had the phase in Manhattan, it had the phase in North Carolina before the recession. So, I mean, that was its own phase. And then it has the phase it's in now. So I kind of feel like it's gone through many phases. So after when I first moved down here, I started this business. It was under my married name and it did well. And I had like two employees, but we were like working out of my home. It was just not anywhere near the way it is today. But then the recession hit and the whole industry here just went like kaput. So I had to let go of the people I had. And I really was just like kind of trying to get enough work to stay alive at that moment, because it was bad. After the recession,
Like
I
of
feel like
2008, right? The recession.
that was 2008, 2009. Yeah. And I would say it really hit my industry about 2010, 2011, because I'm kind of a few years behind. So, once the real estate crash, it took a few years to really get to me to where clients weren't building homes. They weren't, because I do all residential design, and I can talk more about like what I actually do, but it took a few years for it to really get to me where it was like there's no more work. Like nobody else is paying for anything anymore. And that was kind of a scary time. And so I really I feel like I had to hit the reset button yet all over again. And so that was like time number three. And during that time, I got divorced, just to get personal. I got divorced. So I was like, I'm changing the business name and I just want to start fresh. So I took photographs of the work I had done. That was huge for me as an interior designer. Your photos are everything. Like there's only so much marketing you can do without your photos.
Mhm.
And I started marketing again and getting, I mean, tiny projects, like a project for like $45 an hour in Columbia, South Carolina, which is like an hour and a half away and nowhere you want to go. Like, and just slowly, like piece by piece, like rebuilding. So like I would say after that, it was maybe 2 years where people started building again and they started buying houses and I started getting bigger projects. I had to severely cut my rate at that time, right? So like I was back then maybe where I was making $100 an hour, I had to cut it to 45. Like it was just like you had to do what you could do. Yeah, it was rough. It
And
was a
that
very
that correlated with you being a single mom, right?
yeah.
At the same time. Oh my gosh, Amy. Woo.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I had to do what I had to do. So it's like, yeah, you could choose to not take on the work and like wait for a couple years till people pay, you what you're worth, or you cut your rates in half and you bring in as what you can. So that's what I did. And I just slowly, it was probably about 2 years after that I started to hire employees. And so I hired two girls and I remember getting two or three whole homes. And that's where like I will go in and I will start on the floor plans at the very initial phase with the architect and take it through full design and the architectural side to managing the construction to furnishing and decorating it. Those are my projects. So that's my bread and butter. So it's like full scale. And I got like two of those. I was like, okay, I can afford to hire somebody now, because at that time I was working like 90-hour weeks trying to do it all. And that's a hard place to be. And usually I know when to hire someone when I am so, so stressed out that I cannot take on any more. But
Mm.
I also would have this one defect where I would sit around and say, I can just do it. I can handle it. The time it'll take to hire someone else is going to be more intensive, more stressful than to just, so it was always a hump that I had to get over. And so once I would get over that hump and actually hire someone, it was always for the best, always. Even today, I still had kind of have that like trepidation around it. But and then we got into our own little office space, and yeah, and that was, I guess, maybe 10, 11 years ago. And today I have 6 designers and 2 employees and a beautiful studio. So we've really grown.
That is so cool. And where is your office?
I am in a town called Cornelius, which is in Lake Norman, and we are about 15 minutes north of Charlotte. So the city center of Charlotte.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, perfect. And so
Yeah.
is most of your work in that area, or do you actually do work all over the country?
I would say 80% of it is here. We do work all over. I mean, I still have clients that call me from when I lived in New York, so that is just insane. But a lot of our clients have second and third homes. And so, like one, for example, he's like, I just bought a condo in Miami. I'm building a beach house. And so we get to do those, and those are fun.
Those are the good clients. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
those are the great clients. Yeah, he just told me the other day too. He's like, we've decided to build our fourth house. It's going to be 16,000 square feet, and you're doing the whole thing. Like, okay, I need 2 more designers.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's cool. I think what I love about small businesses and entrepreneurs is the idea that they give other people jobs. That you can create jobs for other people. And, you're impacting your customers, but you're also impacting other people's lives by giving people jobs that they love.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a big step because, you can do it to a certain point and then you can't you can't do it anymore. So you have to have other people. And it's just the most amazing thing to give people a chance to do what they love. And you're doing that.
I am. And actually, I was thinking about that the other day, and I was saying, I mean, the designers that I've hired, they have just a couple years out of school, and they're getting such an amazing opportunity. Like we have really good work here, and they're coming in, and I let them just jump right in. And I'm like, I had to crawl my way to this point. And so I am proud and grateful that I get to give people that, I get to give people their dream job. And that just like, so that makes me really feel rewarded. And then, yes, and then there are like with my clients, they are usually a pain for 2 years, but the minute I do the reveal, and they walk in their home and it's finally done and the tears come and it's like, okay, I've done something good. Because my profession can feel very materialistic at times. And so sometimes that's kind of hard. When you're doing like, I'm a very passionate, like empathetic person. And so I want people to enjoy the process, and home building is not always enjoyable. Like clients are fighting, they're money has stretched out or gone away, or they've spent more than they wanted to. So, but there are those moments at the end when it is very rewarding. But yes, I enjoy being able to give other people jobs, and I'm feeding other families. And
Hmm.
I can't think about it like that sometimes, because then I'm like, oh, that's way too much responsibility. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, but like the truth of the matter is I am like, I'm keeping 10 other families going.
Yeah, and in the happiest way because they're actually doing something that they love, and that's different. That's different from like you providing like well, an example is that I have a brother who has a company and it's hard for him to find workers to do the work because it's not fun work. So
Yeah.
he may be employing people, but they're not actually doing something they want to do generally.
Yeah.
And that's different. You're giving people a job, but it doesn't bring them joy like what you're doing. So
Yeah, and I have to check in with them a lot too, and just say, hey, are you getting to do what you want to do? Like, there's a lot of grueling work in what we do too. That's not always so much fun, and just make sure that, like, I feel like for me, keeping my employees happy and knowing they're valued, is like top priority, because I can only get so far without them, right? Like, so I need them. I need them to be motivated. I want them to feel respected. I want them to feel valued. Um, I have really tried to integrate like balance, because I have burnt out on this career before myself, and like I give everyone half days on Fridays, and I let them work from home. And so I try really hard to like create a good place where they feel healthy, like emotionally, mentally. Because I mean, I can only go so far without a good team.
Hmm.
Like,
Exactly. Hey, here's a really good question. Do you think it's easier to start your own business back in the day without social media and technology and so much competition, or do you think it's might be easier now?
I would say it might be easier now. Like if I decided I wanted to, well, I will say it'd be easier now because I have more experience and I have a photography. So I think everybody has their thing they need to market themselves. If you have that thing, like if I say I wanted to move to another part of the country, I can easily get online and post my photos and post my work and post my reviews and probably get work like anywhere in the country if I wanted to. But that's because I have 20 something years experience. So
Oh.
like when you're new and you're young and you're getting into your field, then you're going to have a lot of competition. And so then you just have a ton of competition. But I think it also depends on the field. Like right now, interior design is overly saturated. Everybody wants to do it. And there are just some businesses in fields that are like that. They're just overly saturated. But I do think if I was thinking that the other day, I was like, gosh, I could probably start a business in another part of the country so much easier. Like when I first moved to North Carolina, the internet still wasn't really that big of a thing. I mean, it was like 2006. I mean, it was a thing, but it's just changed so much.
Oh
It
yeah.
sounds crazy, but it has. I remember I was having to make postcards and drive around and put them in people's mailboxes, and
Oh,
like,
that's
um,
old school marketing.
it was so old school. I know. And I'm like, but that's what it was. It sounds like 2006 wasn't that long ago, but it really was. So I can't imagine having to do that again.
Did you have to do your original website yourself or did you pay somebody?
I did. I did it myself. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could have paid someone, but I just was like, I think there was like Wix or something maybe, or I
WordPress?
think
Would you have done WordPress?
maybe,
Oh my
I think
gosh. That's so funny. It's so funny
been
that,
so long ago. Yeah.
yeah, think about like learning the new technology of doing that. I mean, it's a
But yeah.
different skill set to build your own website versus being an interior designer.
Yeah, oh, completely. And every time that I've gone through, and I did finally hire someone right before COVID to take over and rebrand me.
Okay.
And that was a major change for me because as soon as I had a few projects under my belt and they rebranded me, I changed my logo. They put me out there and we went through this major boom at COVID, and
Tell us more about that. Yes, tell us about that. Like what happened?
yeah, it was insane. So we went from maybe 4 employees. I had maybe 4 employees to like 9 within a year. Um, so we were just moving along at normal pace, and then when COVID hit, everybody went home and so they were there. So part of it was, hey, I'm home, and they hadn't lost their jobs. So COVID didn't hit some of the people, like my clients, they didn't hit those populations as much. So the higher income making, clients, they didn't get hit. And so they were home and they were like, well, now we have time to renovate our kitchen or do this or do that. So those came in. But also at the same time, interest rates were really low. And just everybody were like, a lot of people are moving to where I live. So this is a retirement area. So it's a beautiful lake. And so we have people coming from all over the country. So I think people started really thinking I'm moving out of my cities, these big cities. I want to go somewhere more remote where it's safer. I don't know. It just was like this perfect storm. And we just like got slammed. And it was like all of a sudden I had just done my new marketing and I got on some builders radar that I've been trying to get on for years. And we just got like so much work. And instead of being like, oh my gosh, I can't handle all the work, I don't have enough people, I was just like, I am riding this wave. So I just like
Yeah.
hired 5 new people, which was insane because I had to train them all. And I just worked really hard and was like, I mean, this is what I've been asking for. It's been working so hard for. So it's here. And instead of just putting people on wait lists and saying no, I just took it, and figured it out. It was really how my business boomed to where it is today, is that I did that. Because otherwise, I don't know if I'd have as much business as I have today, because I
Yeah.
really got in with some builders that love me and they're like, so they bring me all their homes. And things have slowed down since then. So if I didn't have that steady stream of business coming in from these builders that grew to love me during that time, it would be, could be a little bit more difficult to have a lot of jobs coming in.
I have two questions about this. So, um, where do you find your employees?
Mhm. That's a great question. I like to say, and this may sound a little far out there, but I like to say I have like a designer up there somewhere that just brings me what I need, like a design god in the like I don't know. It's so weird. Like I just what I need comes to me when I need it. And it's just, and that has been a huge principle I ran my business on, is just having faith that what I need will show up when I need it to show up. And it has always worked for me. So I put out ads. But I'll be honest, like sometimes it's just like people just magically appear in my life and I have no like explanation about it. But like my very first employee, she found me. She called me and was like, "Hey, I'm just wondering, do you have any openings?" And I met with her and I just knew she was going to be who I needed. And I hired her right then and there. Sometimes I will put out ads and like search the schools. Like I'll call like some of the professors at some of the schools
Oh,
around town that I know, or like in North Carolina, and say, hey, do you have any, um, you know, girls or guys that are coming out of program that you think would be a good fit for me? Like I stay in touch with my professor and she'll send me people sometimes, so.
thanks for doing that
um,
as a professor.
yeah. Yeah, her and I still stay in touch. It's really funny. In fact, I had a girl who went through the same program who was with me for like 3 years, and she was awesome. We had the same professor, but I was 20 years older than her, so it's just so funny. But I just everywhere I put word out, like I will ask other builders or other sales reps that come in to sell materials, like they come to update our library and our material library, and I'll say, hey, do you know of anyone good? But so I just recently went through this major purge of my staff, where a couple left, one moved back home, one I let go, and one went out on her own. And it was like, oh my gosh, like I went from like six designers to two, like overnight. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so that was in November. And so I had to really just kind of put an effort to try to find people. I found one girl who started, she's great. And then two just showed up in one day. I was like, I put an ad out and like they just came in, and then the senior designer just showed up out of nowhere. And she's like, I'm looking for a job. She worked in LA and New York. And I was like, okay. I was like, I think, but I have to take a chance because sometimes these girls don't show up. And I say girls because that's just who's come to me. I'm not trying to be like sexist or anything, but like that's just who I have. They just show up and they may not have all the right skills, but I intuitively am like, I think you can learn the right skills. I think you have what it takes. And so I give them like a 3 month, and I'm like, if they really want this, they'll learn what I need them to learn. They'll learn that program or that SketchUp or AutoCAD. And let's see, how bad do they want it? And they've turned out to be amazing. So it's just, I go with my gut a lot. And sometimes I haven't made always the right decisions and I've had to let them go. I brought in positions that I brought in a marketing person once, and I thought anyone that knew how to do marketing should be able to figure out how to market an interior design firm, but this guy should probably have been marketing like football or something.
Oh,
So
no.
like, his idea to market a high-end luxury design firm was like banners at the high school football game. And I was like, okay. So I had to let him go. But again, my motto is you can always make a different choice, right?
You
Nothing is locked in.
I
Like you
love
can
that.
always, yeah, you can always make a different choice. You should try
No,
something.
it's so important because when you look at it like you are, with this idea of this kind of 3 month period, not only do you want to get a feel for whether that person's going to fit, they need to get a
Mhm.
feel for you, and they should have the right to be able to see, do they, is this fully for them or is it not? So,
That's right.
so the idea of looking at it as I'm going to take a chance on this person, we'll see what happens in the next 3 months, and how wonderful to say in 3 months, are you happy? Am I happy?
Yeah.
No, we're not happy. We go our separate ways. Or yes, we're happy. Let's do this. I think
Okay.
that's a beautifully healthy way of doing it because, again, each person has the opportunity to make a different choice. And if they're not
Okay.
happy and not doing the work, they shouldn't stay.
No, they shouldn't. And I've had people here that weren't happy with whether, so because what I do is like kind of both sides of the brain, left brain, right brain. We do very technical stuff and we do very decorative stuff. And not everyone has both sides of the brain. So people will get in here and they might get pigeonholed into something. I'll give them opportunity. Let's say they're wonderful at drafting and they're wonderful at thinking technically, but they can't put a room together, fabrics or furniture and make it look good. I'll give them enough opportunity, but at some point I'm like, okay, this is what you're strong at. So this is what you're going to be doing if you stay here with me. They might not like that and they'll try, but then someone else will come in and they'll get the opportunities to do things and they feel inferior or not as good. And it creates like a bad work environment. It creates a very bad work environment. And so I would prefer if they're not happy or not fully fulfilled that they don't stay because it's just not good. Then they're out there the guy gossiping and talking about they're not happy and it promotes negativity. And that's no way to really get a job done in any, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, does your job require you to travel at all?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Like,
Well, especially when I have my out of town projects.
do you get to travel with your job? Might be the other way of asking it, huh?
I do. I mean, like when I had the job in Miami, I was going down every other month because we gutted the place. The beach houses, I go out to the beach houses. So it just depends on where the projects are. I can also travel to like trade shows and things like that if I'd like. I'm just usually so busy, like being a mom, that travel is hard. But like there, Paris has like a week of just furniture and design and there's things going on all the time that I could choose to be a part of. But yeah, so you can actually travel as much or as little or as much as you want in this business. You can do work from afar now very easily. So like a lot of my clients don't live here, like they're moving here from California or New York or whatever. So a lot of our work is done online, with Zoom calls. I'll make them come into the studio for like some meetings. I'm like, you need to be here so I can do some of this with you. You need to feel things. You need to touch stuff. Like I can send samples, but sometimes it could be 50 pounds of samples. And I have this gigantic library in my studio, whereas if you don't like something, I can just open up a drawer and pull something else. So it's really important that they come here. Um, but yeah, I mean, I could travel as much, as little as I wanted. So I was even just saying, like, if I really wanted to get some work in another state, like one of the girls that works for me, she's like, I want to get work in Utah. Utah has beautiful. And I'm like, well, we could do it. We just have to market ourselves there and then be willing to travel there. And, yes, travel is part of it. And I think some designers travel a lot. It just depends on their job and their projects.
And their desire to.
And their desire to,
Yeah.
yeah. Like for me, traveling right now is not the easiest. Like because I am, raising well, my daughter's 15 now, so but she still needs me, It's like she emotionally needs me more than physically. So it's like I'll go off I remember going to Miami for the week, for 3 or 4 days and like her needing me and having to come home, and be like, I have to come home, and but that's why it's good to have a staff because like they can go in my place if I don't have to be in all places, at all times.
Does she seem to be interested in wanting to be an interior designer as well?
There are days where I think she does. I think she's still very much trying to figure out what she wants, and I try very hard not to push it. So she knows she's taken the interior design class in high school, and she has professors that have said to her, like in visual arts, you drew this like an interior designer, or she redoes her room a lot. So I see it. She's very creative, but she has a very hard time making decisions. And making decisions is everything in this business. Like you have to be able to make a lot of decisions very quickly and feel comfortable with them. And so we'll see. I feel like she may, but I just don't know. And she may just be in that age where she's like, I don't know who I am yet. And I don't want to just be a mini mom because we look alike, we kind of act alike. So everyone's like, oh, that's your mini me. So I don't know. She might be trying to figure out who she is. So we'll see.
Oh, that's so cute. Oftentimes, it seems like it's kind of rare when kids decide to do what their parents did. Like I was in fashion design and had my own fashion company, and my
Oh,
kids had
wow.
no interest in it. Probably because I was always dressing them up in different things and taking their clothes. They didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, and I honestly, I told her, I said, look, this business is rough. Everyone hears interior design and they're like, oh, that's awesome. And then all I have to say then is, have you ever built a custom home? And they're like, no. And I'm like, have you ever heard stories about people who build custom homes? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, now imagine building 10 or 15 at one time with different clients and different builders. And it puts it into perspective of like, this is a very stressful job. It's a very, very stressful job. And you get yelled at a lot, and you got builders that don't want to do what subcontractors, you got many personalities coming at you at all times. So if she chooses to, that's great. If she doesn't, I'm fine with that too. Like I would love to pass the business down to her and have it a point where she didn't have to go through some of the abuse kind of that I had to go through, because I'll say this about what I do and living in the South. There's a lot of still good old boy mentality down here. We're women, so that pretty much right now, just like in Manhattan and whatnot, you got respect still. Down here in the South, not so much. You're in the construction world. And you're a designer, which means you don't know what the hell you're doing. That's basically the way they take it. So I am under the bus when the job starts, crawling my way out, trying to get respect. And I'm very, very, very like, I'm very like careful what leaves my office to make sure it makes it look like we know what we're doing. Because there's a lot of people that say, I just want to, I'm going to quit my job and be an interior designer. And they go out there and they start telling you how to build a kitchen or whatnot. And they have no idea what they're doing or talking about. And it gives us a really bad rap. And so I'm like, no, I'm fighting to trying to give us a good reputation and not just, someone that builders think, oh, they don't know what they're doing, so don't listen to them. They're just going to throw us Pinterest pictures, but they have no idea how to build it. And it's constant.
Oh my gosh. Hey, so when I like you've mentioned several, but what would you say are the biggest challenges that you face? I mean, the idea that you're a woman in the South is a challenge.
Mhm.
Employees are a challenge. What
Mhm.
is the biggest challenge?
Well, I think that is probably has been probably one of my biggest challenges is like I said, I kind of start out under the bus, and so like people, they don't really understand what I do. And it takes like, because there is such a wide range of interior design, like you can call yourself an interior designer if you just pick color, and you can call yourself an interior designer if you do what I do, which is like basically like interior architecture and full-blown design and construction. And so because there aren't, my field is getting regulated, and like now I'm licensed, you have to take exams, like you pass your exams and become licensed to call yourself an interior designer. That doesn't mean people do. So like when you come to the table, people have this preconceived idea of who you are, how you're going to show up, that you don't know what you're doing. And so that's been the hardest part, is just like even clients that come to me, I have to sit them down and give them like an hour and a half dog and pony show of, this is my value. This is why you hire me. I'm going to take your floor plans and they're going to look like this. And when I'm done, they're going to look like that. And then I'm going to help make sure the builder knows what he's doing to get to execute what we've designed. And in their mind, they're thinking, well, I have an architect and I have a builder. So if they're good, why do I need you? I can go pick up my own furniture. And so they don't even understand like the value of what we really bring. And so at the very end of the project, then they're like, I don't know how to do this without you. But it's like, it's 2 years in before they understand my real value. So my repeat clients, of course, they're just like letting me do it. She knows what she's doing. But I'm having to claw my way through each project because people don't really fully trust you. They don't really know your value. So they argue with you about like, why should we pay you this much? Because they don't understand the value. Um, and yeah, so those are all major challenges. Is yeah.
Huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so tell me about when you pivoted, like times in your mind where you really shifted direction.
Um, I would say I would say it was probably when I decided to ride that wave at COVID and to take the work and to say, okay, I want to go from a two-person firm or three-person employee firm to a 9 to 10 person firm. And I'm going to invest this money in the studio that I invested a ton of money in the studio and I have this beautiful studio. But it was a lot of money out of pocket. And I was like, and I'm going to present myself to the community. I'm going to present myself as this to get that, like dress for success kind of thing. And so it was at that moment, I think that I probably took the biggest risk and the biggest pivot of just saying, I'm going to let myself grow. I'm going to let myself, and then also to kind of market myself because people will say, they're like, no one else is doing what you're doing of putting out like the interior architecture. Like I even draw most people's home plans at this point. Like the architects I work with, they're just kind of like, oh, we just give it to Amy. She's going to do it and give it back to us. So like kind of allowing myself the ability to step up and provide so many services that other designers don't provide, but then not charge 3 times the amount. So it's been like, I charge more, but I have to still be able to be, somewhat competitive with the rest of the designers in the industry, until I'm majorly famous. And then I can just be like, just pay me what I want. But so, and to really be very like as dedicated as I am to making sure that any drawing that leaves my office is like professional and like putting in the time to do all that. So that was just a choice I made was like, if I'm going to take on all this work, I don't want the quality to lack and I want to be different. I want to provide services that are different than other designers. It was a lot to take on at one time. And I think at that point I could have just decided, hey, let's just take on a couple projects. Let's just hire a few employees. Let's still work from home. Um, and I chose to take this bigger route.
Wow, that's so significant. Hey,
Yeah.
what keeps I have this vision. I know that, okay, I've walked into some houses, like people maybe pop the top on their house. That happens a lot in Colorado. And sometimes my mind is blown at how beautiful it is and what the transformation is. And sometimes I walk in and I'm like, oh my gosh, clearly you're a man and you did this yourself.
Ha. Yeah.
It's
I
so
have that same reaction.
Oh my God. I mean, like, oh, why? You put it, it's the same amount of money, I'm sure. And so, like, what would you say are some of the trends that are happening right now? So when you like what do you bring to a space and how do you take it from kind of a conventional space to something that is inspiring and really up-leveled?
Mhm. I mean, it's definitely all about the details. So there's two things. So one is I don't provide the same look for everyone. So like some designers, they sell themselves on this is my look. When you come to me, this is what you're getting. Like Shay McGee or some of these other designers that are bigger in the field. And that's fine. Like that's totally fine if that's how you want to market yourself. I'm kind of mine is like getting to know the client. Like and I like to do different projects. I think I get bored doing the same look all the time. So part of it for me is really getting to know the client and like what is it that makes them tick and what do they like and like what are they drawn to? And then really getting into the space and seeing, where is it kind of lacking detail? Where is it lacking like the extra architectural components that can take this from an okay space to a wow space? Like what can I do that's going to make it feel more architectural, just not so like just like a builder grade kind of thing. So that's part of why people, hire us is to take the rooms and say, it could be anything. It could be dropping soffits and add on custom cabinetry. It could be ceiling details. It could be lighting. I don't know. Every space is different. It could be something totally different. But that's my job is to try to figure out, which space and how can I make it more just upgrade it visually than how it's planned to be right now. Like, what can we do to make it look more special?
So
So
when you have a
that's what I
client,
do.
when you have a client that comes in, how do you get them to convey or demonstrate to you or communicate to you what it is they want. I mean, do you have people do a Pinterest board or
Mhm.
okay, tell
I
us about
do. Yeah, so I mean, they don't have to, but most people do. Like most people are very excited about their new home, so they're like, "Oh, I want to go online and get inspiration." Some take it way too far to where I'm like, "You got to stop." Like, because at some point you got to let me create my magic because I might be able to do it better than your Pinterest board, you know. But this has been interesting that I've realized over the past few years, so much of it is intuitive. And I didn't realize how intuitive I really am with this stuff until I hired designers and they're like, well, how do you know what they want? And I'm like, how do I know what they want? Like, how is it that I intuitively know what they want? Like, and then I'm like, okay, I'm more intuitive than I thought. So some of it is intuition. Some of it is just knowing, like when I see it, I in my gut like says they would love that. So it's so intuitive, but it's about their personalities. It's about the Pinterest boards can say a ton, right? Like it can just immediately like, and it may not be a specific room. It could just be a vibe. It's like, what's your vibe? What's your aesthetic? Like, how do you want your home to feel? Like, not necessarily look, but feel. And once you can figure out how you want them to feel, then usually, you can kind of start to get on board. And then after the first design meeting, that tells you a lot too. So I always look at the first design meeting as like my intuitive stab of let's see. I kind of look at it as like a game, like let's see how close I can get, without really knowing them. And then after the first design meeting, usually you either hit the nail on the head or very rarely do I not. Like very rarely have I completely misinterpreted it. Um, and that happens. And when it does, you just have to pivot, not perfect all the time, but so there's a combination, I guess. Sometimes going in their existing home helps.
okay.
Um, but I don't do that a lot because a lot of them are coming from other parts of the country and they're coming from homes you don't want to recreate.
Okay. Yeah, because they probably don't want if they're having a second home, they probably don't want just exactly what they already have, I would imagine.
Yeah.
They want
Yeah.
something.
And a lot of them are like, Amy, they're like, I kind of know. I mean, some of them know and it's simple and straightforward. Every Pinterest image looks the same. And some are like, I don't really know what I want. They're like, can you help me? And then I kind of help get to know them and figure out what I think they would like.
Cool. That's so cool. Hey, so what do you think, like when you think about your business in 5 years, where do you want it to be? How will it look different?
The only thing that I've been considering adding so I'm very happy with where I'm at right now. I would like to continue to stay where we are taking on. I'm very selective with the projects I take on. I'm only taking on with builders I enjoy working with. So I'm not having to crawl myself out from under the bus they come to me and they're like, she's awesome. You need to work with her. So I want to continue with that. Like, I don't want to do a whole lot of let me prove my value to you. Like, so I like to shift out of that. And I'm thinking about possibly opening a showroom, like maybe a place. So my studio right now is basically an architectural studio. So it's where we do all design. I have a tiny little area where people can sit on pieces, but because the other half of my business is sales, like, so we didn't really touch on this, but we sell all the furniture and goods that we put in people's homes. So half my income comes from design fees and the other half comes from sales. So we buy everything wholesale, mark it up and resell it like a furniture store. My problem is I don't have anywhere for people to go sit on the product or see the product. There's very few places in Charlotte, in bigger cities, you have showrooms and design centers. Like when I lived in Manhattan, I could take them to the design centers and see the product. We don't have that here. And even though we're in North Carolina, they have High Point Market twice a year. They shut down. So you can only go twice a year and see the product. So I'm having to tell my clients, trust me. And then I'm taking on the responsibility of it's going to come in. And if it isn't, I have to eat the cost, because I'm just ethical like that. Like if it comes in and it doesn't look like it's supposed to, or it doesn't look good, or it's uncomfortable, I'm not going to make my client like, well, you picked it, you're stuck with it. I won't do that.
Mhm.
So I would love to maybe have a little showroom where I can take clients and maybe open it up to the public but that's like almost a whole nother business and sell goods maybe online as well, like a little marketplace.
Oh, wow. I can see how that would be a very interesting addition, like a nice expansion. But then you'd need somebody that would absolutely manage that retail space
Yeah.
for you, so you didn't
It would
have.
have to be a totally separate entity, like attached to my business, but like I can't imagine moving my studio into that. It would be a separate business, maybe under the same name, but yeah, I need someone else to run it. Maybe have a warehouse space.
Hey, and you know what? Very likely that person will show up.
Yeah.
You'll be somewhere on some retreat in Egypt or whatever, and somebody will be like, my ideal thing would be to own like a furniture store. And
That's
let
how things work out for me.
I
I'm not
know.
joking. I've even had moments where I'm like, do I want to do this anymore? Do I want to just shut down and go find something else? And like, it's like, nope, this is what you're doing because we're bringing you three more amazing employees. And so just strap in. You're in for the long haul. This is what you're doing.
Um,
So I feel guided.
I love that. Hey, so what advice would you give to what advice do you have for new entrepreneurs that want to start their own business? What would you say?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is to just, have a more positive, you have to have a positive out attitude. You have to be willing to take risks. But I've taken risks and failed too. Like, so it's not just, I think there's a lot of if you believe you can do it, it'll happen. And there is a lot of that. Like you're creating your own reality. But I have failed in some ventures I've taken too. So I think it's about being willing to take the risk, knowing that no matter what, you're going to be okay. Like you'll figure it out. Like you may, and being willing to pivot at any time. So if you take a risk and it doesn't work out, being emotionally capable of just saying, okay, that's all right. I'm going to stand back up and dust myself back off and it'll pass and I'm going to figure out something else, So you just got to be able to ride those ups and downs. You got to be courageous enough to take risk. You got to be able to know that not everything is set in stone. I mean, life isn't set in stone, and that you will be taken care of. There has to be some innate understanding that everything will be okay, I think. For me, I don't know. I've had to trust on something greater than myself. That's been my path. And I'm not a religious person or anything like that, but I've just truly believed that I will be taken care of. And I have been. It might not have shown up the way I wanted it to, at all times. A lot of times it has. So you got to be brave.
I love that. Okay, so tell us something about your business that would surprise us.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. Be something about my business that would surprise you. I have no idea. But not told you anything about my business that would surprise you yet. Let's see. Maybe the fact that people don't like instantaneously value you or like, trust you just right off the go. Like I think that most people probably think that, hey, if you've got a well-known designer in the area, that people are just going to kind of show up and trust them, but that we still have to and we still learning things every day. I'm like, how am I 20 something years into my career and I just figured that out? Like, we don't know everything all the time. Like, but I think that would probably be the biggest thing is that like, maybe I don't really know.
I love that. I love that idea that you still have to prove yourself. People, when you go and search somebody out and say, okay, this is the person I want to work with, there's still relationship building that has to happen. I mean, they come to you and they trust you, but there's still a lot of relationship that has to be built there.
There is, and a lot of trust, and a lot of people can't see things. So, like, I have a client right now. She has given me a Pinterest board. I have literally given her the samples, and I'll sit them and I'll say, here's the samples. And she'll say, yeah, but I like this. And I'm like, that is this. So they can't see this to that. Like, they can't see what they like in sample form, right? So they can't, and I'm like, because they're seeing a whole room of wood versus one tiny little swatch of wood or whatever. So they can't see it. So they have to and then I'm like, you just have to trust me. You just have to trust me. And sometimes people just can't trust you. So what they do is they nag me for 2 years to tell them every day that I'm giving them what they want. So, and I am such a psychiatrist. It's not even funny.
Oh
I
yeah.
can't even tell you how many times I'm calming people down. Like, they come in here, that might surprise people. They come in here just a bitch, just like, I understand, it's going to be okay. I see this all the time, and it's like I'm literally consoling my clients over their construction woes, and having to kind of be the person that's like being positive and like, validating them, hearing them and helping them solve the problem. It's like, it's just so much. Like if you don't have good people skills and you don't have that ability to communicate and make people feel welcomed and heard and understood, I don't know if you can make it in this business. I don't think it matters how good you are.
Right. What about marriage counseling?
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? I see so much. I have learned so much about relationships doing this job. Like, I've seen so many marriages. They come to me and they're just basically like, we've been fighting. We don't know. We just said you would make, whatever Amy says will be the
Okay.
decision. I have had some situations where I was really uncomfortable though with the way they were treating each other and like and kind of, was like, am I gonna have to say something? Like, is it gonna get so bad that I have to say something? And I don't know. Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, this has just been so great. I love talking to you and I love
Well,
hearing your
thank you, Becky.
story. Yeah, and I'm actually I'm going to send out your website so people can see what you do because
Okay.
you know th just looking at your background is beautiful, but to see the work that you do is going to be really fun for us. So I'm going to encourage people to do that because I'm going
Thank
to
you. Thank you.